Hello, everybody. Welcome to the OT Association and Indie Bridge presentation of Your Role as OT. Look in the chat for a copy of both the original and retyped article, Your Responsibility as OT, originally published in Advance magazine. Please hold all questions until the end of the presentation or type them in the chat to be addressed during Q&A and discussion. Thank you so much. Remember to mute yourself. Okay, unless you want to say something. Today's speaker is Trey Lotz. Trey, it's all for you.
Okay. Well, I read this article quite a long time ago, and I just thought it was a wonderful explanation of the scope of the tech and its application. And the title of the article was Your Responsibility as an OT. And the word responsibility has a lot of button meanings to people. It's often a very charged word. So I wanted to just clear up, I think what LRH is talking about here in terms of how he would define responsibility. This is from the Tech Dictionary. It says responsibility is the sphere of influence the individual can rationally affect around other people, life, mess, and the general environment. So I see the best definition of responsibility is just being taking care of the things that are in your space. Now, an OT encompasses the space of an OT encompasses much more than is first dynamic. The more OT you get, the more you encompass the other dynamics. So the gradient towards OT is the inclusion of more and more of the dynamics in your space. And a Thetan naturally wants to take care of the things that are in his space, the things that he cares for. He wants to take care of them. And that's really what responsibility is. It's a sort of a natural tendency, and it's the natural path of growth towards OT is to take more and more, include more and more things in your space, which you then are caring for. And that's just what naturally occurs as you go up the bridge. So the article, I was just so impressed with this article that I wanted to share it with everybody. And this is taken from the tape States of Identity, uh, but it's a good summary. It says your main line is the improvement of the being who is willing to be improved. I think that's a pretty good comprehensive statement. You know, you want to help people who are willing to be helped. Now, you can still help people that are not willing to be helped, but that's a different level of expertise. There's a whole technology, book of case remedies, and so on that you can address some of those points. But the main line would be people who are reaching, you can help them improve themselves. He says eventually you get an improved being who is willing to be improved. You will eventually get enough improved beings so that your influence on the society around you is such that you can then handle the problems in society, which must be handled in order to snap society out of being insane. That is the gradient. It's not, in actual fact, a problem in making one OT. It's the whole scope of the dynamics that you're involved in, and that's a gradient. Says there'd be nothing wrong with you as an OT fixing up a crippled boy's leg as he hobbles down the street. Suddenly he stands on the corner, sort of stony-eyed, and finds out that he doesn't need his crutches anymore. If you could do it, you could do it. And that's a key point too. There's some people who have sort of random OT abilities. You can go to some um, doctors or chiropractors or just people who have a certain um, amount of free theta and you feel better in their space, or they do a laying on of hands and you get some improvement in your body. And that's an OT ability, but doesn't mean they have all the OT abilities that they've got that one. So as LRH says, if you can do it, you can do it. It'd be a problem of endowing life. You'd only go wrong if you tried to explain to him what had happened. Possibly he would come upscale to faith. So if someone could be lifted up by the idea of faith or belief, that's great. But that isn't what you're lifting them up by. You're lifting them up by the bootstraps of hope. And I think this is also very important because a lot of people say, well, you have faith in the text, so therefore, it works for you, and I don't have faith in it, so it doesn't work for me. Well, that sort of has it backwards. You see it work, and then you have confidence in it that it's workable. And as LRH says, first you have the hope that you could do something about that, that the auditor could do something about things or the person that's working with them. And uh, then hope that maybe he could do something about it. Then people come up the line to a point where their small hopes materialize. So you're lifting the person up by hope. You're helping them handle one thing in their case, like an upset, and they think, maybe if it handled this, maybe it could handle this other thing also that bothers me. So then they can reach for more gradient bridge, and that's really how it works. When it does work well, that's really how it works. So he says you'll notice that some people have very mad hopes. They want you to audit them for an hour to OT. That's so they can go out and cut the throats of all their enemies. The fellow gets a solution to all of his enemies by wanting to become OT instantly. He says we all have a slight impulse in that direction, but that isn't the reason why we have to arrive at where we have to arrive at. What common denominator is there to an individual's increase of beingness? He is less the effect of cause as he improves, and if he were getting worse, he would be more the effect of cause, and that includes not only his own cause, but other causes as well. So more more cause, less effect. And of course, OT is willing cause and willing effect. It's not I'm only causing and resist being an effect of anything. You can't, that's not OT. Anyway, so as he improves, he is less the effect of causes. As he deteriorates and goes downhill, he becomes more and more the effect of causes. In other words, he's likely to conceive himself to be the effect of anything that happens. Plus, he's lost the awareness of what's causing that effect. He has the source point as something out there and not something ultimately that he's become the effect of based on his own cause. He loses that connection. He says to safeguard himself, he can and go down scale into a philosophy that he doesn't exist, isn't worth anything anyway, and therefore it doesn't matter what he's the effect of. Below that, he can go into faith. You eventually get a person who is totally irresponsible. Total faith would be, I'm not going to do anything about it, but maybe God will. He says, thus it is the state of beingness of the person that determines whether or not he will listen to you. That means that you have to have some understandings of the states of beingness. When you have a Thetan who's very, very caved in, he's on a reverse. Anything which he can do, he's not doing, but it is being done. Every once in a while, as an auditor, you run into somebody who says, when I make a postulate, I always get the opposite happening. Or when I'm doing well, and then things always go wrong. That's just, rolling from a cause into a reverse on automatic. He says this is modified by the fact that he's lost some of the ability to even that happen. In other words, he's effect of his own cause totally unknowingly. For example, he has a ball of fire hit himself in the stomach, and he goes right away and prays to the local tribal god because he's afflicted. Um, he has to go one awful long way upscale before he actually realizes that he hit himself in the stomach with the ball of fire. So don't minimize that distance because the distance from somebody who's unaudited to clear is a long way. And it's very true. It's one step at a time. Interestingly enough, the states of beingness that man will recognize do, however, include gods, saints, miracle men, messiahs, all kinds of beings. Even little kids conceive of such beings in comic strip, such as Batman and Superman. Yes, man is very capable of conceiving such beings as long as they're exterior and as long as they're not very real. He can conceive of them through a holy book, the Quran, the Pali canons, but you can actually shake somebody rigid, a Muslim, for example, if you said, what if, as you were reading that book, a disembodied hand reached out and turned the page and pointed to a paragraph you were reading? The fact of the matter is he would go rather into horror, even though he was professing great belief in such beings, and his ability to confront them would be very bad indeed. Now, add to that, maybe what if this disembodied hand pointed to a word and said, "You passed and misunderstood"? Well, that would be even higher gradient. So, now, and this is a really key point here. So, what man can conceive and what man can confront are two different things. So, you can fantasize about being OT, but being OT is it's a lot different. There's an old idea that if you really knew what it was like to be OT, you'd be OT. If you really knew what it was like to be clear, you'd be clear. Um, Beyond that, you only have the idea of what it'd be like, and that um, it would entail a degree of confront that is not inherent in the person. So what he's really talking about there is that the index of how OT you can be is really how OT you are in present time, because that's the gradient of what you can confront, what you can have. Um, the more havingness of your own OT abilities that exist, the more OT you are. So it says, now the pity of all these states of beingness is there's a limit to the amount one can do for another. One cannot live another's life for him without being the other. One can provide a safe environment. One can show a way. One can blaze a trail and demonstrate and hold in place a methodology. One can provide for the ethical application or administration of technology. One can give advice. One can sit around and pervade the environment with calmness. One might be able to even mock up a new leg for a crippled boy. These are all great. And again, that's such a key point. You know, when um, you assess really what effect you can create on the environment, this is what you're talking about. You can do everything right. You can train, you can audit, you can just cause people to have a peaceful space to exist in. He says these are all great. Man in the past considered these things absolutely miraculous. So what I'm giving you now is the understatement of the age. Man's religious textbooks are full of just this. These are all of his tests. The test of what is a great spiritual leader or an OT. Can he heal people? But that's the limit. The rest is up to the guy. And here's the key point. Unless you lead an individual up to the point of increasing his own beingness, he in fact will never arrive. He will never become any Thetan. He will always go around thinking of himself as the brain or the body. He won't become aware of himself as a spiritual being. You can show him the way, you can provide the environment, you can make it easy for him. Well, that's what you do as an auditor. You try to make it easy for somebody. You can yourself be expert. You can do various things, even including, as I say, exuding calm. You can audit, you can train, you can do many things. but the final net result depends on the individual himself. And that is the point that has been missed in all past endeavors in self-betterment or the improvement of man or civilization. They have always contained the element that if a state became socialistic enough, if the priest said enough prayers, if there are enough joss sticks, incense sticks burned on the altar, some miraculous intervention would take place that would make this sow's ear into a silk purse. The miraculous intervention has to come from the person himself. That is the miraculous intervention that will get him out of the mud. And such miraculous interventions will actually hand into his hands today with Scientology technology his own beingness. People ask what it's like to be OT. What it's like to be OT is just being yourself. This is a goal which has been man's goal for a very long time, not a slight gift. Happiness, power, continuation, continuity of beingness, also very important. You can handle all kinds of different situations as yourself. You're not going into different valences in order to handle different areas of life. He says you can do that and so much more. In the final analysis, a being has to be led up to a point by a fairly uninturbulated environment. He has to be led up to a point by various approaches where he could stimulate enough to somehow or another reach the next rung. I mean, you know yourself if you've ever audited people, if their environment is too chaotic, it's like one step forward and one step back. And it's very hard to really make any stable process. They aren't able to establish some sort of a stable environment which can expand. It's always um, a little bit forward, and then something disastrous happens. Um, you have to help a person somehow or another reach the next rung to overcome the terrors of becoming the effect, and therefore put his own feet on his own road to his own destiny. In the absence of doing that, he won't make it. The only thing you can do is to help him somehow or another, to make those first steps so he can walk in that direction. But there are limits to the amount of help which he can be given. Well, a lot of the work he has to do himself. Again, people want to fantasize about going OT, but are they really willing to do the work? That's where the confront comes in. The persistence, the study, the continuing to get auditing to do their bridge, to solo audit it. Um, it's just a lot for people. And if they don't do it, they won't make it. And that's pretty much the bottom line. He says there are limits to the amount of help one can be given. That gives you a very great forecast on really how many clears and OTs there will be and how successfully the whole thing comes off. It will come off to the degree that all of us provide a secure environment in which the person can destimulate to a point where they can find there is a way to walk. And this is the main point of the whole article. It will come off to the degree, he says, you might ordinarily think that maybe trying to make a family or your home calmer or make somebody's life a little bit easier to live, or maybe perhaps hardly worth doing. It's such a tiny amount. Yeah, when you look at the planet and its condition and the billions of people, and you go, yeah, I'm auditing one guy, or I'm auditing 10 guys or 50 guys. That's as many people as live in the apartment building next to me. You could think that way, and LRH has an interesting point. He says you can always use order of magnitude to invalidate anything. Like, well, what difference does it make 100 years from now what I do today? Or there's a million people, what does it matter if somebody dies, It's using order of magnitude to invalidate uh, something in present time. It's a real big mistake. He says, but that is the final effort that will let the bulk of humanity out. It's how calm and how decent you can make the environment in which they live. And that is the responsibility of an OT. That's what an OT naturally does. He creates an environment that's sane, decent, stable, allows people to find a way and to go up their bridge and to find a way to make things go right for themselves and the rest of their dynamics. So I just thought that was a great overview, from the 300-foot level of looking at the tech and its influence on society and how it's going to happen. Everybody can do this, whether they're, to whatever degree you're OT or um, you have a high responsibility level or whatever your responsibility level is, you care for those things that you're responsible for, and then you try to increase that responsibility and put more and more things into your space that you then have some interaction with that creates a positive effect. So anyway, that's pretty much the whole article. Um, Interested in any questions or comments about it?
Yes, would anyone like to comment or ask a question? Just go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll go from here.
I wanted to say it's very interesting when you go up the bridge as an OT and or become clear an OT and you kind of make more and more order in your own dynamics and in yourself and others' lives. Um, Personally, for me, there was always a point where I was like, okay, I'm good enough. My life is great. I feel good. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I have a great relationship. Work is good. How can I help others now? So, and that's for me, that was the decision point when I became an auditor. Because once you have achieved a really good point, then it's kind of time to help others. And that can cause so much happiness in turn when you help a person. And it is really like, throwing a rock in a pond and it makes ripples and expands further and further outward. So in a way, as an OT, when you help others in session and they in turn improve others' lives, you have a really big influence. So personally, for me, that was the point where I felt I became OT when I started helping others efficiently and effectively with the tech.
Well, it's such a wonderful way to put it, see. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's just even you don't even have to go as far as becoming an auditor. I hope everybody does. I hope everybody interacts with people in a way that improves their life. But even simple thing as being kind to a stranger or doing something, picking up trash off the off the street, any of that kind of thing. It's all a step in the right direction. Tiny, yes. It's the way things go. It has to go that way.
Yes.
Yes, for a
Smile.
long, oh, go ahead, see, I'm sorry.
No, I just said just walking around and just smiling at someone and making them kind of come up tone.
Right.
For
Exactly.
exactly. For a long time, I thought I was remiss for not pursuing becoming an auditor. And I had to read a lot, but there was something that LRH said about being 3 feet back of society's head, which is exterior to society, and having a larger viewpoint about what's going on, a larger scope of being able to view what's going on. And I realized, after 42 years of teaching, that's what I was doing. I was providing gradient instruction, kind of figuring out where my students were and working with them on a gradient up from there. I provided LRH tech. They didn't know it, but I was using it. Look up your words. I taught a study skills class and I included, the barriers to study in that. So I think I did my part. I think I improved life in a classroom for students who were willing to be there, like Trey said. I had students come in with wins from looking up words and getting A's on their exams, and their minds were blown. It was like that easy for them to. do well in college. I taught at the college level. So
Yeah, I
that
would.
was my form of auditing. Go ahead. Yes,
No,
Yeah.
yes.
I really understand what both of you were just saying about becoming an auditor. I think that being OT, you eventually are going to run into that conundrum about you should be an auditor at that point. You know
Yeah.
that that's what you should be doing. But like Mary, like you're saying, well, should I, shouldn't I? I think it's a gradient scale. There are very few auditors, very few people make it to be auditors. We all want to be, I think, at some point, or we admire it at least, we admire it so much. But I think we will all get there at some point as we become more OT, because that is the responsibility of an OT. Ultimately, I know that. Can I do that? I don't know, but that is my goal. And
Right.
as you become OT, more OT, I guess you would say, it becomes clear, like you're saying, that you want the universe to be that way too. So how is it going to get that way unless you help make it that way? So real great lecture, Trey. Just
Yeah,
Good
great.
thank you.
points.
Yeah.
Good points, Timothy. Very good.
And we have the tech to make great changes. Just something as simple as a locational can really alter somebody's state of being. I mean, I'm a class one. I've studied class two, but I can't claim it because I'm not done with it. But even a tiny locational will just, or an assist will really help somebody. I retired for a few years and I'm back teaching class now. And I've just never had people come up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, you're a real teacher. You are so fun to be around. You're just, all this in a bag of fries." And I'm shocked. It's like, ooh. But it's just who I've become. It's a lot. I'll say something as an OT, life is easier. It's like you don't resist so much of what's coming at you. And I think that's the ability to be in effect. You know, Somebody's over there throwing a fit about something and you go, okay.
Yeah.
Or somebody's angry at you, go, well, that's not me. That's them doing that. Okay, what do I need to do here? So you're a little more cause over things. And I've really noticed a huge change lately that um, just I resist things less and it's much more enjoyable that way.
Yeah, well, and that's the great example of just everyday things that anybody can do. You actually want to listen to somebody and to acknowledge them. Like Mary said, from whatever hat you have, you're training people, you're teaching people, you're just setting a good example. All of those things can be done by anybody at any time. And one way to assess is just to really take an honest look at what effect you're creating on your environment and the people around you, and how big is your space? How big is your environment that you're willing to create an effect on? You know, I mean, even the fourth dynamic, you like I'm not participating in any peace talks, but I'm putting my own theta behind it, you know. So um anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and just applying the auditor's code. If you're not a trained auditor, you just read the reference auditor's code and you apply it to your family and you apply it to your business, with your clients or with your assistants. It's such an incredibly amazing tool. Or as an executive, and you can kind of just look at each of those points and see how you can convert it to life. It's a very, very good tool as well to kind of, exert your OT-ness.
Good point. Also, I would like to chime in about training and CSing you guys. Trey and I worked really closely together, auditing and training guys up the bridge. And I see that as people, especially to get into the OT levels, and of course, their attention is on, well, what am I going to get from this? And will I be able to handle this or that and so forth? And then they're very often very surprised at how, since that last session, I am having an effect on the environment around me. And they're just becoming aware that all of a sudden other people are more receptive to what I'm talking about, or other people seem to be automatically more friendly to me, and they're quite amazed at this happening. But it's an example of the kind of thing Trey was talking about, that your willingness to take care of the space around you. I think it kind of starts with that. You become more and more willing to be responsible for a bigger and bigger space. And it can't help but communicate to other people. And they somehow sense this, just like a dog will sense that, oh, that's a friendly person,
Right. Yeah, I was just, even not long ago, I was auditing somebody on the havingness rundown, and about halfway through it, he suddenly looked up and said, "You know what? I just realized when we first started this, all my answers were about me. Now my answers are about groups and society."
Yay.
And
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it was happening before he even realized it was happening.
Right.
I also think the KRC triangle is very, very important: knowledge, responsibility, and control. If you become responsible and you feel, okay, you are the cause point of your dynamics, that's responsibility. But now you need knowledge in the various areas that you're working on, or more knowledge, whatever it is, so that you're able to control things better, to start, change, stop. And I guess the more knowledge you add, the larger the responsibility aspect becomes, etc. So that could also increase the sphere of influence or of control that a person is having. Because when you said, Trey, when you were talking about the order of magnitudes and how you invalidate yourself, or you tend to invalidate, I sometimes do it. I'm like, oh, I could be more responsible. I could do much more. Why am I not doing it? But it's just because I probably failed to add that knowledge part to that KRC triangle. So I
Mhm.
think the more I add, the larger that sphere of influence become.
Could we hear Lenny for a second?
Yeah, I'd like to go through life with a little game. It's kind of become a habit now. And that is, I try to make grumpy people laugh.
Good.
And I deal with a number of people in my line of work, and oftentimes um, what I'll do is I'll just match their tone level. Right off the bat, I'll just match their tone level. And then before they can detect it on a gradient, ever so slightly, I'm bringing them up tone. I'm going up tone just a little bit, And then once I get them to smile or laugh, and I go, got them.
Good.
Yeah, humor is an important that's an important tool too. If you're kind of easygoing, good-natured, and kind of see things with a little bit of humor, what that helps you to do, helps you to not be involved in GPMs, because GPMs are not funny, and a lot of stuff is very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But oftentimes you can actually make a joke down at their tone level.
Right.
Yeah, and that works too. Then you can still bring them up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lenny. I was wondering if anybody else noticed it. Just a little comment here. Tony, Tony Zile, I know you want to probably say something here. Did you note? I could just see it. I could feel it. I can feel it in my brains. Okay. Um, uh, there's a couple paragraphs at the very beginning of this article, where LRH talks about being enmested, healing a crippled child's leg. Then he talks about someone being unwilling to be audited. And then he talks about hope. These are all spots on the bridge. You
Yeah,
know,
the awareness levels. That's right.
precisely. If you look at the very bottom, I think hope is one of them. And I was looking through this, and eventually, by page 4, he's brought us up to talking about exuding calm and what it is to be OT. And he does this in Problems of Work, where he starts out in apathy and despair and brings people up through enthusiasm throughout the book. He rises in tone, and it's a real interesting thing. I've noticed this a few times in LRH's work. Okay, I'm done.
That's
Tony,
great. Thank you,
yeah,
Mary.
yeah, just an observation. Tony, did you have something to say?
Can you hear me okay? Am I connected?
Yep,
Yes,
all
we hear
good.
you.
Good. Yeah. And yeah, you know, this OT business, as I would put it at the moment, as probably a lot of us know, Trey and Randy, and of course, including myself, have dragged me, quote unquote, up the scale to finishing OT 7 and 8. And I've been definitely, since Trey got me to the EP, I've been sort of like, what are you, looking around, figuring out what the H is going on in a good way. And I don't have any of this stuff anymore. I'm having to reorient, which is a really happy problem, to figure out what to be and what to do and what to have in the universe, because I don't have this constant barrage of key-ins and stimulations and distractions, and oh my God. So I'm in this era of sitting the body down and going, oh, the body's going to live another 15 years. Really? Because I'm 78 and we're going to be 79. And I'm going, physically, I was probably 3 years ago as I was going, I might be dying pretty soon. Da, 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 da. And that just totally blew. Now, that's a fascinating thing. And of course, I look at Trey as a shining example of how to have your Cadillac running smooth and getting it back into shape, meaning your body. Uh, and there's of course Jerry, who I've met. Jerry, how long ago was that I met you at Trey's? It was a long time ago. Wow.
About 12 years since Jerry
Yeah.
appeared on the scene. Yeah.
And Jerry told me things about OT. I'll just put it this way, that boy, that was right down my alley. I mean, yeah. And that was so cool. So that's a couple of tidbits. Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks, Tony.
Mary,
Yes.
I'd just like to introduce myself to this group. I
Oh,
haven't been around.
is that Byron? Hi. Hi.
Yes, it is Byron.
To everyone for being here, and I hope you go and have a great weekend. Our next OTA event, just a reminder, is the data series with our new OTA member, Rich Kennedy. And he's going to have some really interesting stuff for us. Something about data series in everyday life. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler, but it's in the planning stages. So Saturday, July 18th, 11 o'clock Pacific time. That's what that'll be. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Again, our contact information, indiebridge.org is our website. And you can email us. I'm sorry, what?
That's clearing their throat. Okay.
Oh, okay, sorry. info@indiebridge.org. You can send us questions, suggestions, just email us to let you know how things are going. And we also have Indie Bridge on Facebook. And you just search for Indie Bridge, INDIE space BRIDGE, and you can fill in the membership questions, have a preview of the group rules. All you have to do is agree to the group rules with a toggle switch at the bottom, and we'll get in touch, and you'll be a member. And you can join our over 200 members now, and just share some good wins and a good good, peaceful Facebook page. No infighting. We just don't let that go on. So yeah, it's really, really a peaceful place to talk to other independent Scientologists.
The infighting, I think, would be pretty rare on a site like that.
Well, you'd be surprised. There are exceptions, but
I
I won't go there. But IndieBridge
go
is
ahead.
definitely a chill place to be.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Here we go. I want to thank you for being here and tell you that that's it.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Trey.
Bye.
Thank you.